Hello, welcome to another episode of Talking Brexit with me and Thom Brooks, Professor Thom Brooks of Durham University.
You can call me Thom.
Professor Thom. This week we can talk a little bit about what the hell's been going on in Parliament the last couple of weeks. We've got another meaningful vote.
How many hours do we have?
We've got another meaningful vote coming up.
That's right.
But what my concern
What is the meaning of that?
Well, I always think Tories will Tory. They'll just Tory. That's what Tories do.
You mean keep power and do everything they can to ruthlessly keep power?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's what Tories do.
My concern is that up until about 2 weeks ago, me and a lot of the anti-Brexit campaigners, activists, were pushing for the people's vote.
Yeah.
And the chance for that to become an amendment was put forward by John Bercow, so it wasn't even Andrea Leadsom who got to choose what went on the agenda. It was actually being chosen by someone who actually had the interests of the country at heart. With Jeremy Corbyn's support, we could have got a people's vote, as far as I'm concerned. Can you explain to me why that's not the case, or maybe why I'm mistaken?
Wow. I have a number of thoughts on this. One of them is, I was down in London for the media scrum. I was in Westminster. I was on College Green. I was doing
down,
interviews.
do you mean like really depressed? Because that's what Brexit's doing to me.
I was certainly. I felt some degree of being down, but also a renewed optimism for a couple reasons. One was when I walked into before I talk about what happened inside Parliament. When I walked into Westminster Tube Station, I saw People's Vote plastered everywhere. I didn't see Barclays Bank. I didn't see other types of corporate things. I saw that everywhere. And when I went outside, I saw only one flag everywhere. It was blue and it had yellow stars. And it was all over the fencing and the media people. And I can't obviously give you the names of all the different media organizations I spoke with, but I spoke to a lot of the people assembled there, a lot of people would have seen on TV. And asked them.
Steve Bray and the Southern Demonstration have been outside Parliament every day for the last 2 years. We've also got the number 10 vigil, we've got the EU flag mafia. I mean, these guys have been out in rain and hail and storms, and the clowns that have turned up recently, the EDL types with the yellow vests on, they've only been there for a few weeks.
They were not
been there for months and months.
You're absolutely right.
And at the moment, it feels like both of the main political parties don't care. They're not listening to us. They're rounding the 52% that voted for Leave up to 100, and the 48% down to 0. And it's like you don't have any representation. And given this unearthing of this footage from 2009, where Corbyn was talking about the second Lisbon Treaty referendum, in quite horrific terms. He was talking about the EU being a military Frankenstein, and obviously getting it mixed up because it's Frankenstein's monster. Frankenstein was the inventor. Anyway, that's not the point. It seems to me that we're going to go out either way. My point was, when I went to Westminster, I was buoyed by the fact that I thought that momentum had changed. It was the view of all the journalists I spoke to. Can I just interject? That's a funny American way of saying buoyed. They say buoys instead of boys.
Thank you very much for translating this.
I've been on boats.
Travel expert. You're a travel expert.
I've been on boats.
So I defer to your cross-cultural communication expertise.
You were buoyed by.
I felt better about where things are going. And when I spoke to journalists from not only American but other broadcasters who were assembled there, they all thought that the referendum, while had been an aspiration for a lot of folks, was now very much becoming something that was gaining greater traction. I still think that. I take the point, though, and I share the disappointment that amendment didn't pass. I think it was
Luciana Berger
surprising.
Came out. Luciana Berger, Liverpool MP,
yes.
also Jewish.
Yes.
And she was outside Parliament giving a speech saying we can't table the amendment that we wanted to because Jeremy Corbyn won't get behind it. I don't think that's disgraceful in a democracy in which 80% of Labour members and supporters want a second referendum. To completely ignore them on the basis of an ideology shared by the likes of Rees-Mogg and Nigel Farage. And the day where I see the Nigel Farage thing, showing this footage of Corbyn saying, yeah, the EU's the enemy on radio. And I'm like, well, we can't win, can we?
Well, I think it's possible. I mean, I take the point that I am not for leaving the European Union at all. So that's me. I take the point, and so I don't agree with the side that thinks it's a good thing, but I also take the point that there's more than one view as to why we should leave. The so-called Lexit views and others, there's different views
the Lexit
on that side.
How can it be sustainable? How can we build a socialist utopia on borrowed money? We've seen $1 trillion of assets leave the City of London so far, and it's not the Brexit isn't even over yet. Those assets, we got tax money from the profits made on those assets. That tax money is now going to go to the Irish government or the German government. That means less public services, less money to go around, less money for the elderly, less money for the ill, less money to educate our children, and for the NHS. How is that left wing?
I have not been persuaded by those who make the non-Rees-Mogg case for Brexit. There are people out there. The thought that instead of taking a conservative Tory-led Britain towards a more progressive European Union, that we can go even further progressive than the European Union somehow will hold us back on the kind of progressive standards that we want to have.
The European Union, that includes Portugal with their drugs policy, which is incredibly progressive, Finland, with its amazing education policy, Sweden and places like Netherlands, which have got great social security, Germany, which invited 1 million refugees into the country while we were quibbling over the ages of a handful of people coming in because we didn't know whether they were adults or not. They didn't have the papers with them.
Graham,
I mean, if I look around the world and look at socialist countries, they're all in bloody Europe. What are there some in Africa that I'm not aware of? Is there a mad socialist utopia in? Maybe in Bhutan.
Bhutan with the land of the dragon,
yes.
Thunder Dragon.
They also have a growth rate of 11%. It's 11% of nothing, but
they are unable to determine their own foreign policy in Bhutan, because you will be aware that the kingdom foreign policy is dictated by India in an agreement that goes back to, I think, more than 100 years ago. Moving swiftly along, I don't need to be convinced that the so-called left-wing arguments and versions of things for Brexit are not. I've not been persuaded by that, so I don't quite get that part of the argument. I think what is the particularly frustrating thing at the moment for a lot of us who want a referendum, and I'm one of them. I want a referendum. I want a people's vote.
I want a fair referendum. People say, do you want a second referendum? I'm like, no, I want a first one. Well, that's fair. Where no one cheats, no one breaks the law, there's no foreign interference. And if there is, there's a criminal investigation to find out what actually went on. We don't have that.
I mean, I'm for that there being a referendum. I think it can happen pretty quickly if the government wanted to happen. I'd be very happy to explain. I'd be very happy to explain why I think the government, it's even in their interest. I think at the moment right now there is if there's any, this is a guess, but there's anything to kind of explain why is it that the Labour Party is, or at least is perceived to be, very much dragging its heels, frustrating a lot of folks, not listening to a great majority of its members that very clearly want a second referendum, very clearly are not supportive of the Brexit process, absolutely opposed to what the Prime Minister is doing. Why is it not kind of leaping headfirst into any of this kind of stuff? I think it is very much in the process of ensuring that before it does that step, that everything else has been ruled out. And I think...
Why?
I think it's very clearly trying to rule everything else out, because so it can't be accused in any way, shape, or form of frustrating Brexit, having Brexit kind of implode in and on itself.
Only 20% of Labour voters want Brexit now. I mean, even in the actual vote, it was 66% didn't want us to leave the EU, and only 33% did. That's not for the many. That's literally for the few. And saying, there were a lot of Labour constituencies that voted to leave. Yeah. But do you know what? because of our first past the post system, you could have literally everybody who didn't vote Labour in the last election could have voted to leave, and it would have been an overwhelming landslide to leave, because you only need 35% to win.
Well, let me
an election.
Well, let me go back to one of the things that Keir Starmer said.
You mean the guy who wasn't invited to number 10?
The guy who was
the Brexit guy?
Probably.
The shadow Brexit secretary, Keir Starmer.
And an old friend of mine.
Not invited to number 10. How did he feel about that?
I have not asked him about how he felt about number 10. I did see him, I thought was it last week? I said he was looking remarkably all right for someone who must be absolutely driven into the ground.
By Jeremy Corbyn.
I don't think he's driven into the ground by Jeremy Corbyn. I think he's driven into the ground by the incredulous, hard to fathom what the government will do next on Brexit.
I think what the government's going to do next. The government is going to keep plugging away at Theresa May's deal that she's got. She's going to keep presenting it to Parliament. And on March the 29th, on Friday at 4 p.m, there'll be a vote, and Jeremy Corbyn will 3-line whip his party to support the Tories, because it'll be that or no deal. And we'll be out. And Jacob Rees-Mogg will be like, yay!
Jacob Rees-Mogg, what Jacob Rees-Mogg thinks and does is alien to how I think and view the world, so I can't possibly comment on him.
Not alien to how Corbyn views
I think
the world.
It is. I think it is alien, because I think that
what they'll get along.
I don't think so.
Public school boys.
I think that what Rees-Mogg wants is not what Corbyn wants. They both don't want each other in number 10. They each want to maybe be themselves or have close friends of theirs in number 10.
They want Brexit, which is the biggest issue facing the United Kingdom at this time. It's cost, like I say, over $1 trillion of assets that have left the City of London. Dyson moved out. We've seen Sony and Panasonic move their headquarters.
With Jeremy Corbyn, I mean, one kind of very big difference is that Jeremy Corbyn's party had a very big discussion at the last party conference. I was there. They came to a resolution of basically that everything should be on the table, including people's vote. It was a controversial statement that was made.
Everything should be on the table.
Well, it was woolly.
Olives.
It was woolly until Keir Starmer said, and it will include the people's vote. A second referendum will be on the table. We will have those red lines. These will be things that shouldn't be ruled out necessarily. We want to look at all these different things and try to get the best deal for Britain. I think that is. I think the point that people will want a greater certitude on when exactly a referendum might happen.
But it's not going to happen with Jeremy Corbyn. He does not want one. And there's a way out of this. You're saying everything's on the table. Well, one of the things on the table is vote with the Conservatives. Again, like they did at the activation of Article 50, before the politicians themselves had decided what they wanted.
My current reading is that Theresa May did get a majority in Parliament. Curiously, she voted with a majority that her deal was a bad one. That she should go to Brussels to try to negotiate something that Brussels said they won't negotiate, to try to do something they say they won't do. No, it's absolutely
Tories
nuts.
got a Tory?
I think it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, but that's the Conservatives. That's what they are. They are the ridiculous party.
I couldn't agree more.
But why haven't we got somebody standing up and going, hang on, this is wrong, instead of backbench politicians like Yvette Cooper and David Lammy doing all the hard work, going, actually, there's a large proportion of the population that want to have a second vote. They want to see an investigation into the first one and the criminality that went on. And
they should get it.
We want to. Most of us want to stay in the EU.
Yeah, I think the issue is largely around timing. So I think that what I would expect is that as soon as it is confirmed yet again, and it seems already this morning,
for a third time,
at least.
You don't think they're running down the clock?
The Labour Party,
Both
not at all. Yeah. I don't. I think the Tories are. I think Theresa May, that's the only card she's got.
Yeah, but she'll run it down until March 29th, and then Labour will have it will be Theresa May's deal or no deal. To which they're going to go with Theresa May's deal because it's better than no deal, which is awful.
Yeah.
It's a terrible, terrible deal. But, it's better than no deal because no deal is going to be catastrophic.
No deal would be catastrophic. I think that there's no doubt about that. The government has made virtually no plans at all for Brexit. I think it is something bordering on the politically inept or beyond that the Prime Minister would have said in the beginning. I mean, showed that she hadn't taken my negotiation 101 here at Durham Law School.
From my point of view,
in arguing that no deal was somehow better than a bad deal, I thought was just, who are you negotiating with?
Inept. You're talking about people who are inept.
Yes,
we're talking about a Labour leader at the moment, Jeremy Corbyn, who is 6 points behind in the polls against the most evil, corrupt, stupid Tory party in history. He's still 6 points behind the polls because people who voted Remain don't want anything to do with them now because they're like, you've betrayed us. We have spent the last 2.5 years campaigning to basically make our politicians see sense, and we are being blocked by one man.
Well, it takes more than one member of Parliament to. The amendment didn't fail by one vote; it lost by several, and I think
he told 6 members of Yvette Cooper's amendment. He told 6 members of his own front bench to abstain, ensuring it didn't get through.
My sense is that I think it's quite literally waiting for the right time, and I think that making sure that all other options have failed, so that the finger can purely be put at one person only, the Prime Minister. I do have the sense, and this is only a personal sense, that there are scars on the backs, metaphorically, of the Labour Party over the financial crash.
It's got nothing to do with that.
I think that memory of being tarred and punished for something that was not its fault is still there, and avoiding that with Brexit at all costs.
I think Iraq's a bigger thing, which was its fault.
I marched against Iraq.
If I criticise Corbyn, I'm told that I'm a Blairite and I wanted Iraq. I'm like, no, I just don't want to leave the EU.
Yeah.
And this guy really wants us to leave the EU. And I think he has too much power. I don't think he's listening to his party. I don't think he's listening to his voters. And he's alienating millions and millions and millions of people who would otherwise vote Labour.
I think to be fair to Jeremy, I'm not so sure of that. I mean, in terms of the things that he really wants, when you listen to the Prime Minister at any time during the day, when she's not doing very bad dancing, we get lots of thoughts about Brexit and how she's going to support her deal, then I'm not going to support my deal, you can't do anything about the backstop, I'm going to try to change the backstop. She's all about this kind of technical detail that's not doing very much.
Yeah.
Whereas on the other side, one of the things that Jeremy did during the local election campaign, for example, and also during the snap election campaign, for example, was to talk about something that wasn't Brexit. To talk about buses, to talk about NHS, to talk about housing, to talk about other issues.
All the stuff that we're not going to be able to afford.
Well, I take the point that Brexit is critically important to a lot of these issues as well.
Just to put into perspective, $1 trillion is the equivalent of more than 1% of the GDP of the planet. The entire planet. And those assets are gone. And they're not going to come back. Because what's the point? We bring them back to a country that is on the high road to destruction, because it seems to want to put up barriers to trade with the rest of the world.
I mean, I take the point that now the money is left. Maybe it might come back at some time in the future, but there will be
He's gone on about buses and the NHS. All politicians do that. The big issue that we are facing at the moment, the reason why we're making this video, the reason why I've been campaigning for the last 2.5 years is because of Brexit. And to be ignored, that's offensive. Imagine if it was the poll tax. Imagine it was Neil Kinnock and he stood up in Parliament and he went, poll tax, well, what are you going to do? Don't want to say no to it because I might alienate voters who would never vote for us anyway.
I don't think that...
We need those racist votes.
I don't think anyone's looking for racist votes, and I don't think that, certainly on the Labour side, and I don't think that people are being kind of shut out. Indeed, it's a majority of the party that is for Remain.
I've heard time and time again on social media about us thick racist northern monkeys being so stupid that we have to be placated by the Labour Party. I find it really patronising and kind of unforgivable that this is a narrative that is being put out by, Momentum or just Labour supporters in general. We have to support Brexit because otherwise we'll insult, the good people of Sunderland. Meanwhile, the good people of Sunderland are getting absolutely shafted because Nissan are going to be winding down production. There's going to be no car production in Sunderland in 10 years' time.
I was in Sunderland last week for a Sky News debate as the Brexpert, as they called me. I'm sorry to hear it. And I was the Brexpert. And what was very interesting is not just on air, but also off air, a lot of the conversations between the group split for Leave and those who are for Remain, those who were for remaining were very concerned about Nissan in particular, and very worried that, look, there's no chance that they're going to stay, no chance that there's going to be renewed investment, that this is a real risk, and so on and so forth. And those who were for Leave thought, no, there's already been investment promises, the Prime Minister's letter, all these things, no chance of this. And I would love to have that same group of people back in the room now a week later. We saw things have changed fundamentally.
They just deny it. They say, it's still Project Fear when it's actually happening.
Well, I don't know.
And it's happening for a good reason. I mean, Nissan are not going to pay 9.8% duty, tax, tariffs. They've got to pass that on to their customers in other countries when the EU has just signed a massive trade deal with China, which incrementally brings in 0 tariffs over the next 10 years. Which is, by that time that's all done, we're not going to be driving diesel cars anyway. But one of the things about it being diesel is okay, I'd accept the argument of Jacob Rees-Mogg. It's nothing to do with Brexit, it's all to do with the diesel, the decline.
Yeah.
Why are they still making the cars?
Yeah.
They're just making them in another country.
Yeah. Well, no, that's right. I mean, what I found particularly disingenuous by the comments of, well, it's just diesel. Manufacturing is just kind of going down or something. 18 months ago, there was a guy called the first Brexit Secretary, otherwise known as David Davis. And he said there was no chance that the German automakers and others were going to let Britain walk away. The importance of our car industry and our people buying cars and Britain and cars. This is really big. And
I wish someone had got him
we're not going to have no deal.
Children's blocks out and gone, right, here's a block. That's the GDP of the United Kingdom. It's $2.6 trillion. There you go. And here's the GDP of the European Union. Without the UK, it's about $15 trillion. So who's got the upper hand?
Well,
who's got the money?
I take the point. But 18 months ago, the thought about the car industry being harmed by Brexit, I mean, a lot of the Brexiteers include one of the people who was on the show who's in manufacturing. The manufacturers all thought Brexit might be something potentially that they might be okay on. A lot of the workers at the different steel mills and elsewhere blamed kind of a lot of jobs leaving, not on globalization kind of wider, and that being part of the European Union actually will make us better to fight globalization and better protect and preserve ourselves in the face of global competition. But they somehow thought that in leaving Brexit we can somehow put some kind of brake on the forces of globalization and somehow better be able to weather all this kind of stuff. Now, of course, that was wrong, and I disagree with it, and it's been shown to be wrong, I think, in the latest stuff we've heard from Nissan. But I think that kind of concern about manufacturing and cars, Brexit was going to help this. And to say, it's all going into decline anyway. So hang on a second, guys. That's not what you were saying 18 months ago. You were saying the opposite. And now, 1 minute this is going to help the car industry. Next minute it's going to go falling flat anyway. 1 minute it's going to be helpful for our exports. Next minute, this is all difficult anyway.
Well, if anyone had bothered listening to Patrick Minford, the economist for Brexit, who Jacob Rees-Mogg often quotes, he said in 2011 or whenever it was that it would require the winding down of British industry. So I ask again, why is Jeremy Corbyn, you know the guy, why is he supporting the gutting of the Labour heartlands up here in the north in terms of industry? Why is he supporting a racist policy of, regarding migrants as someone that we don't really want? Why has he gone on record to say that the EU is a military Frankenstein? Why has he gone on the record saying that migrant labour coming over here is driving down British wages, which isn't true? Why is he, in a recent survey in one of the Jewish newspapers, 85% of respondents thought that he was anti-Semitic? If that was me, I would be horrified.
Sure.
I wouldn't step outside, never mind be the leader of the Labour Party.
I think he and others are very horrified by a lot of the social
by
media
himself.
stuff.
Is he horrified by himself? Does he wake up in the morning and go, oh my God?
I'm certain he doesn't do that. I think that there is a lot of really awful stuff that's being said on social media all over the place, and in the Labour Party.
I'm talking about the awful stuff
and
coming out of Jeremy's mouth.
Well, he's been an anti-racist campaigner all his life.
Yeah, Mel Gibson was in Lethal Weapon 2, which was anti-apartheid. He also then got drunk years later and said that Jews cause all the wars in the world. Gandhi was a massive campaigner in South Africa for Hindu rights, not for black people's rights. It is possible to be a bit racist in one respect, but not in another.
When I went to Jeremy Corbyn and I met him the first time, and I think I might be mistaken, I might have done it in a fantastic city of Liverpool, that I said, hi Jeremy Corbyn, I'm Thom Brooks and I'm an immigrant. Yeah. And before I could get out, immigration experts, and I've been advising the party for a while and hope to work with him and his team. Before I could get all those words out, which I eventually did, he hugged me and said, welcome.
Yeah.
He's been he's been kind of positive about immigration in general. He's been positive in my conversations with immigration with him. The shadow immigration minister right now that he appointed is Afzal Khan, who is an immigrant himself, and also an anti-racism campaigner.
Why say that immigrants are driving down wages? That's something that Nigel Farage would say.
Well,
this is the leader of a left-wing party in the United Kingdom. This isn't America where everyone's right-wing and some are a bit more left-wing, but most of them are right-wing.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen that.
There used to be a centre ground.
Well, I haven't seen the full comment. I mean, there's often been concerns around the agricultural sector and how that works and other types of things. It's certainly true. It's certainly true in my research that is published and has my name on the spine, Becoming British, available at fine bookstores near you, that immigrants are good for the economy, immigrants are good for culture, immigrants are good across the board. They have made the country great. They will continue to do so, not just here, but also in another country I come from, Donald Trump. And by the way, walls don't stop people coming in because they fly over them. Most people fly.
And outstay their visas.
Yeah, that's right. That's how it goes, Donald. Call me if you want some support.
Don't call me.
On immigration. And I would tell you everything you're doing is wrong and to resign before Mueller makes you resign. So I am hopeful that Trump will be in prison.
Okay, so
did I get that out?
Yeah, you did. You did.
Thank you.
Well, basically, I've
don't edit that.
I've said to you, I'm not going to. I've said to you, there's all these problems that I've got with Jeremy Corbyn, what things he's done. You said, well, I met him and he was nice to me, and I think that is.
He's been nice to other people as well.
But the thing is, like, kind of, so what? We need a leader at the moment who is going to oppose what the Tories are doing, which is incredibly damaging to the United Kingdom. The northeast up here is going to see a 16% knock to the economy. That's the government's own figures if we get a good trade deal, which we won't. So it's going to be even worse than that. It's going to devastate people's lives. It's going to kill people who can't get their medicine. I spoke to my family GP last week. My dad takes 12 different pills a day. He's got dementia, he's got type 2 diabetes, he's got heart problems. And basically the doctor said, I can't guarantee that we could be able to get all this stuff if we have a no deal.
It's frightening.
Why is he holding this over my family's head?
Well, I think to be fair, Jeremy Corbyn did not decide to have a referendum. He was not leader of the Labour Party at the time.
He didn't
Jeremy
really
Corbyn did not
do much to.
Well, no, he wasn't for the referendum happening. He wasn't for Theresa May's deal. He has not been supportive of how Theresa May has done the deal. He has not voted for Theresa May's deal. And I think that one of the things that we are seeing is frankly, I mean, I take the point about frustration look, things are so bad with the Conservative Party right now. Things are so terrible and terrifying with Theresa May's
But they're still 6 points ahead in the polls.
Well, I think Theresa May was more than 6 points in the polls before, and we saw what happened to that when the Labour Party had a fair hearing in the media.
Yeah.
When the election was called.
Well, no, it's not a fair hearing. I mean, the media's always going to be horrible to the Labour leader. I mean, look at Ed Miliband. He got crucified for eating a bacon
sandwich.
Yeah, something. I mean, look, the leader of the opposition should expect
which had a lot
to be
of
criticised.
connotations as well for him meeting that. And interesting that a lot of people making accusations against Corbyn now weren't saying anything about that. About Ed Miliband at the time.
Well, I'm not
the
bothered.
Sun,
I'm not that bothered about that. I'm not talking about what the Sun says. I mean, I'm from Liverpool. I've never read the Sun.
Good.
But the point is that a lot of the ideas that prop up the Sun's mentality about migrants being bad for the country because they drive down wages, for instance. A lot of the ideas they have about the EU being the other, that's evil and making us do things that we don't want to do. Those ideas of the Sun newspaper are shared by Jeremy Corbyn, who is the leader of the Labour Party.
I don't think that Jeremy Corbyn and the editorial views of the Sun, Rupert Murdoch, have anything in common.
They're aligned on those two issues, so you have to accept that.
I don't accept that. I think,
do you think he wants Brexit?
No, I don't think he does.
Well, in the face of all available evidence.
In the face of all available evidence, no.
Okay, imagine the Conservative Party had made a robot that they controlled. That was the leader of the Labour Party.
Yeah.
What would the robot do differently?
Well, I think that so if the Tories came up with some evil robot that was doing stuff,
and they controlled it, and they went, right, he's going to be leader of the Labour Party. What would the robot do differently?
I think what they would want their evil robot imitating the leader of the Labour Party to do would be to vote for Theresa May's deal and to show that only the Tories had the way forward, only they had a plan, only they had a roadmap for a golden future for all of us to rally behind. And when the pain comes from Theresa May's deal, that even Labour accepts that this is the only way forward at the first available time, and that we will kind of pay homage to Theresa May.
Okay, you're saying they would vote with the Conservatives. They did. When they activated Article 50 without a plan, without anything in place, just they fired the starter pistol on this whole shebang without putting their ducks in a row first to go to the European Union and say, here's what we want. We're here a month away from disaster of leaving the EU with no deal, and the government still can't decide, amongst itself, never mind Parliament, what it wants. And so he's already done that. He's already voted with the government. He's already said that if he had a general election and Labour won, which is increasingly unlikely by the day, but if they did, Brexit would still go ahead. So how can you say he doesn't want it?
Well, and the Brexit negotiations would still go ahead. And so I think the thought was that the public voted a certain type of way in the referendum, that there were guarantees the Prime Minister made, basically saying things could only get better, to quote another Labour Prime Minister, things only get better, that there would be no diminution of rights, standards, so on and so forth. Chlorinated chicken presumably would be part of the things that we wouldn't be seeing. Ironically, greater control of borders. Theresa May wants yet a border in Northern Ireland that you kind of log in and don't do things. I don't know how she's going to square that circle. I think that she's really got herself in a muddle there. But they really kind of held her up to her own kind of standards, by which she's got no hope.
No, they've let her do what she wanted.
No. She's got no hope of. No. I think she's got no hope of delivering on the promises that she made.
Final question then.
That's what's going on.
Right. Okay. So he's not a robot.
And when that implodes,
he's not a robot being controlled by the Tory party. Because
he is
if
definitely
he was,
not.
he would vote with the Tory party like he did in January 2017. But February 2017. One of the things that is driving me probably the most insane about all this, something you brought up last time we spoke, or the first time we spoke. In America, they have the Mueller inquiry, which is looking into foreign interference and illegality and all the skullduggery that went on around the Trump election.
Indeed.
Why isn't Jeremy Corbyn calling for a public inquiry into the Brexit referendum, which we know criminal irregularities happened?
You would need to ask Jeremy yourself.
Okay,
I mean, why is he not doing things? I don't know.
It's because he wants Brexit.
No, I don't think so. I think to be there's some say there's at least two different issues going on. One is the issue. I mean, and you're right. And just to emphasize to viewers.
Those words.
But no, and neither will I. To remind listeners, viewers, that I absolutely am for a Mueller-like investigation. It is something that I have been shouting about from the rooftops from the beginning. And one of the reasons why I'm very keen on it, other than the fact that it is right,
Yes.
is that in the United States, it can be easy for all of us to overlook that however partisan, however bitter, however divided, however ugly, however nasty other things our social media and public political discourse may well be, it is 100,000 times worse than the United States 10 years ago. Now ratcheted up a lot more under Trump. It has been worse than the United States for a very long time. I have personal experience of a lot of this. It has been rancorous. When the Republicans took control of the White House, which they desperately wanted, knowing they were going to cement their control over the Supreme Court, there was no interest. And this is a point I just want to emphasize, and then I'm going to comment on what I think Labour ought to be doing on Mueller, which it's not doing. There was no interest in making life more difficult for the incumbent president, who most in the Republican Party did not want, we'll call them the establishment for use Trump's phrase. Those who were elected to office, those on the bench, were not particularly supportive of Trump. There was no interest served in getting more legislation through, getting the Republican agenda, if there was such a unified thing as Republican agenda. I don't think there is, but if there was such a thing, it was all going to be made more difficult. But even the most partisan, the most rabid, the most, I would rather shoot myself in the head than vote with a Democrat or be friends with a Democrat in Congress, even they recognized the rule of law. They recognized
Jeremy
the need.
Corbyn.
No.
Yeah.
They recognized
what
the
I
need
just
to do
heard
this.
there is that even the most rabid, lunatic, right-wing Republicans in America have more respect for the rule of law than the leader of the Labour Party.
I think
and this is why I am just bursting into tears now and again.
I think what is different.
This feeling of grief inside me.
I think what's
happening to my country.
I think what is different is that the level of criminality and how it manifests in the alleged behind election of a president.
I'm not seeing $1 trillion of assets leaving America, mate.
I think you are seeing alleged findings of corruption on a level the United States and modern Western liberal democracies have not seen in an age happening under the Trump White House.
That's only because America's a bigger country. On a scale of how much interference went on in the UK referendum, we don't know where Aaron Banks got his money from. They've been fined for overspending, for stealing people's data, for doing these targeted ads that said, the EU's trying to get rid of tea and trying to kill the polar bears. Well, it's nonsense. Complete, not just irregularity, illegality that went on. There's been criminal fines handed out. And so the fact that there is no clamour by the opposition, which could this is the thing about all of this.
There are parts of it. I think David Lammy's on the right on this.
The Brexit referendum and the result of that, the Tories' handling of it. If Labour were screaming at them, we want to have an investigation into what went on, we're not going to respect the result of the referendum because it was advisory and obviously it was flawed and obviously there was irregularities. If they were doing that, they could be wiping the floor with the Conservatives right now, because you would have half of the people who vote Conservative who don't want Brexit going to Labour for this one-off thing to say we need to stop this. And Labour are squandering that for a fictional racist vote in Sunderland that, even if Labour piss off every man, woman and child in Sunderland, they're probably still going to win the constituency in Sunderland because it's so royal's probably a bad phrase to use, but it's so Labour-red, it's never going to change. It's a very, very safe
I think
part of the country for Labour.
I think the relatively brief referendum period in which the referendum period wasn't for months and months. It was a set time, and the Trump corruption that's been alleged, where we've had almost 36, maybe more indictments. I haven't been able to follow all of them. Has been over a year or longer.
but-
It's more extensive, it's further. This is about someone who has the power to appoint people in the cabinet. This is about the representation of the government. This is about the lining of the pockets, allegedly, of the Trump and his family. What's going on in the White House is a much bigger thing. It is much longer. It is much wider. It engulfs, it's a very different kind of beast. Whereas Brexit, thankfully, has not happened.
Well,
Yet.
we've already seen
Yet.
$1 trillion leave the City of London.
Which is bad enough.
Foreign
And
direct
hopefully we won't see
investment
any
down
more.
by 92%. You're not seeing that in America.
I think one of the things that you are
the
seeing...
dollar hasn't lost
Sure.
15% of its value. And at the end of the day, even if Trump wins in 2020, he's got 6 years left. That's it. Then he's out. It's over. Brexit is forever.
Sure.
The financial damage, the damage to our reputation and the damage we've done politically and with our trade and with our industry and with our agriculture and everything else, the damage has already been done. And it's just going to get worse, even if we stop Brexit now. So I don't hold that view of saying, well, look, America was a bigger deal. So what? It's a bigger country.
No. I think it was a bigger. I think it was
Brexit's a much bigger deal.
No, I think it was a bigger, wider type of thing. A series of offences, numbers of people involved. It seems everything that's alleged to be involved in criminality and shenanigans, skullduggery. You said there's a lot of connections between what went on in the United States and here.
But it's not either or.
No. I think they're both.
Why isn't Jeremy Corbyn supporting an inquest into the Brexit referendum?
I think that right now you are seeing, especially through David Lammy, I think you're seeing increasing calls on the Labour side for a Mueller-like investigation, some type of inquiry.
I'm not asking about David Lammy, I'm asking specifically about Jeremy Corbyn.
No, I'm saying you are seeing more of it, and I'm hoping that it will convince Jeremy soon.
It's really interesting to have this conversation.
I am
because
recommending this
obviously
to everyone I speak to.
My reservations about Jeremy Corbyn. I think he's been a terrible leader. I don't think that he likes Jews very much, to be honest with you, by the way he's behaved. I had this thing of like, what if he was anti-Semitic? How differently would he act as leader of the Labour Party? And that the way he's behaved over Brexit and over the majority of Labour voters and Labour members. I was a Labour member until that three-line whip with the Conservatives. And I thought, you know what? The grief that the Lib Dems got for joining up with the bloody Tories and having that government from 2010 to 2015. I mean, that's exactly what we've got now, except it's Labour who are joining up with the Conservatives to push through the flagship Tory agenda that's been on the horizon for the last 40 years to get us out the EU.
Well, I don't think that the Labour Party is signed up to giving the Tories what they want, and I think that Jeremy Corbyn can be accused of a lot of things, but trying to make Tories. He has a long record in Parliament. He's made a lot of speeches and so on and so forth. But I think the last thing he's trying to do is make the Tories happy. I don't think he's trying to give Rees-Mogg or others what they want. I think that Jacob Rees-Mogg will be the first to admit that the vision for Britain that Jeremy has and believes in is a different one than what Jacob Rees-Mogg has for Britain.
I think you've got Rees-Mogg as a disaster capitalist. His dad wrote books famously about how to make money out of an economic disaster. And I think you've got Jeremy Corbyn, who is a disaster socialist. We can build a new Britain from the ashes of what came before, on our own, with all those natural resources we don't have. All this borrowed money that we're going to have to get from the IMF in order just to keep going, in order to keep the NHS going. And one of the most horrible things that we've got to take into account is the fact that because Corbyn will not oppose the Tories on Brexit, which is his it's an open goal for decimating the Conservative Party for a generation. He could do that if he so chose. He's not choosing not to do it. The Tories are going to be in control till 2022. And when it all falls apart because of Brexit and we're desperate, one of the things that Theresa May has not
hoping there'll
ruled
be a
out
snap election in the next few weeks.
Selling off of the NHS to American companies as part of a trade deal with the US. A trade deal which, under the government's own figures, needs to be put in place for the damage to our economy, our whole economy of the United Kingdom, to be only 4%, which is double the damage of the credit crunch for Britain. And they're going to have until 2022 to do whatever they like in that situation, because they'll be controlling our trade deals.
I am very, very skeptical of the current government getting a good deal, a better deal with the United States on those terms or other terms. I am sure that they may well, they claim
it'd be a good deal for them.
for the United States.
Yeah, their economy is like 10 times bigger than ours.
The economy is bigger and other types of things. Donald Trump says lots of things that aren't true. One of them is that he is the world's greatest deal maker. Another, but that said,
I'm talking about the NHS.
you are. And Donald Trump says, America first. Judge him on. He thinks too much American money is going abroad. That he wants to reverse the deficits that America has with other countries, where Americans are giving more of their money elsewhere. They're going to claw that back.
It's because he doesn't understand the first thing about economics. But he's not the one who's going to be negotiating the trade agreement. It's going to be his diplomats.
No, it might be his daughter or her husband will be the ones doing this, because he doesn't trust anybody else, and everyone else that he has tried to trust has left.
But they're going to be the big boy in the room. We're going to be the junior partner.
I am sure that is right. But the point of the story is, we have right now, Britain gets more out of the trade deal with America, current trade deal with America, than America gets. America is giving us money. There's a trade deficit with the UK. The world's greatest deal maker will not want to sign off on something that sees more money coming to Britain. But at the same time, Theresa May needs desperately for Sun readers that we don't read their newspapers, and for the Mail and other papers. And she needs not just a deal, she needs to show that that deficit will be increasing, that we have gotten a benefit from the United States.
From my point of view,
that is impossible for her to get.
From my point of view, Brexit was a Tory idea. It was cooked up by the Conservatives. UKIP.
It is cooked up in more ways than one.
But
UKIP.
They may have given birth to it, but Corbyn is the midwife on all this. And he is allowing the Conservative Party to do whatever the hell they like as far as Brexit's concerned. They'll get us over the line, make sure we're out of Europe, and once we are out of Europe, the Conservative Party, and you know what, the people in Brussels are not idiots. They know the Conservative Party are going to do this. They're just going to turn around and go, right, we're out, we don't care anymore.
I think, to be fair, I take the point that there is frustration, a lot of frustration, and it comes across. And no, it's all right, Graham. And I also, to be fair, I share a lot of the frustration. I think that in my judgment, I don't know all the things. I'm not privy to all the conversations. I advise on immigration in particular. I don't know.
Can you tell him it's a good thing?
The immigration is a good thing. I have.
Yeah. Oh, what did he say?
Well, I was
drives down wages.
I was welcomed. No, that's not what I was told.
Oh.
And in fact,
that's just what he said in public.
What he has said in public is he's against the net migration reduction. He's against the tens of thousands target. He is for something else. He's for removing students from any type of target whatsoever. He's against that. He is against how the Windrush generation is being treated and currently still being deported. He's against that.
But
and he also accepts
that.
He and others that I have spoken to and the Labour Party are entirely of the view that what's going on what happened with Windrush, which was alarming and frightening and wrong and everything, is almost certain to be done much worse
to the
right
EU
now.
citizens living here.
And a very live concern.
So why doesn't he just stop it? He has the power to stop Brexit more than any other human being on the planet right now.
He is the leader of Her Majesty's most loyal opposition and does not have a majority vote.
Labour plus SNP plus Liberal Democrats plus the Green
do not
plus
equal
Tory
majority.
Rebels. There's 20 of them. That's a majority. Get your calculator out. Work it out. That's a majority.
We have not seen what we have seen majorities on is and I think
that no deal would be off the table, but it wasn't a non-binding.
Well, I think a number of things. Jeremy Corbyn.
We've got to go. I've got an interview.
In 30 seconds or less.
Go on.
I don't know if I'm sure it won't be the final word, but I don't think that Jeremy Corbyn I think he's given the government a lot of headaches on a number of issues.
Has he?
No deal is off the table. The only government in the history of Britain.
It's not off the table. That was non-binding. It's the only thing on the table at the moment.
The one thing we know about what Britain's deal might be is that there must be a deal. Parliament will not consider going out with no deal.
They'll go with May's deal.
I don't think that's going to happen. I also...
I bet a fiver on it.
Yeah, I bet a fiver on it. I don't think that. I also think the only government in the history of Britain to be found in contempt of Parliament.
Yeah.
We have had that thanks to the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn, calling them out on legal advice.
Who is still 6 points behind the only government to be found in contempt of
I don't run
Parliament.
the public opinion things, and we've seen what happens when Corbyn gets a fair media hearing. His numbers go up a lot. But the other thing, the final thing,
He's getting crucified on social media.
I
People all
think-
over Twitter, all over Facebook. People
on the
are
contrary,
sick of it.
you want to talk about on social media? One of the big things on social media was Turning Point UK. This kind of incorporating this American-led grassroots university. Let's go do this kind of professor watch list crap. Intolerant right-wing.
Yeah, but it got absolutely decimated by people just putting parody accounts up.
Yeah,
Funny nonsense on-
thankfully to
Social
those
media.
on the left who stand up against the stuff. So I don't think Jeremy Corbyn's being crucified. I think he's got a lot of folks who are very supportive.
He should
but
be
the
10
final
points
thing
ahead.
is the biggest defeat of anything in Parliament has also been Theresa May's deal, supported by Jeremy
And they're
Corbyn.
still ahead of the Conservatives are still ahead of Labour in all the polls.
Well,
Anyway, okay, so we're going to have to disagree to agree.
we
No.
disagree on that. That's fine. But a pleasure speaking again.
Can we do this again? You're not
Always
gonna,
a joy.
We'll pick a different topic next time. But
And
yeah.
I remain buoyant. I am the professor who thought Brexit would not genuinely happen, and I still think that. I would not.
I think it's going to happen, and I think it's all going to be Jeremy Corbyn's fault.